This headline right here, 2023 housing market projected to have fewest sales since 2008. So for one, let's read through this article. It's always one good thing as you look at articles to go through, digest them, and see exactly what's going on in the article instead of just reading the headline. Because right here, I see this being one huge red indicator that we potentially could have a challenging market, not only 2023 but 2024, and it lets me think that we're in this huge potential deep dive of the market, but that's not true. Let's go through a little bit of this. So since 2008, they talk about the economy ultimately pushing real estate to roughly 4.1 million sales. Usually it's about 5.5 to 6 million sales a year. So we're roughly, about 1.5 million to 2 million off that mark. So that's just last month's sales retreated 15.4%. Granted, this is not price. This is not home price. This is sales on a paced record comparatively to what we had in 2008. And the reason 2008 we had that really deep slowdown was, obviously everybody knew, because there was not good loans that were ultimately happening between the banks and the borrowers, and there was a huge shift in it. This scenario is because there's really no inventory, no one's looking to list their home, and then the interest rates are so high on the other end of the buyers that, because I've done so many different videos on this, there's so many buyers that are holding off to see what exactly happens, that there's this almost stalemate between both the seller and the buyer. So as we grow through each and every economy, it really depends on what the data shows. And this talks about, like I said, sales retreated 15.4%. Also, this is the lowest application amount that they've seen since 1995. So basically you could wrap that back to 30 years almost, 28 years, and show that it's been almost 28 years, or it's been 28 years that we've had a difference in people applying for mortgages because interest rates are so high. Affordability is right now for home buyers is so tough. And then the next one, that being said, the last time sales have been this low was during the Great Recession. Obviously, we know why. And slowdown drove home prices down as much as 30%. So they're trying to indicate that potentially this could drive home prices down. However, we had a different scenario there. We had about active listings throughout the whole nation then in 2008, 4.5 million active listings, okay? Not talking about sales. Like I talked about earlier, we have roughly 4.1 million sales this year going to be. That's a projection per Redfin. But I'm talking about active listings. Active listings right now across the United States, we have about 1 million. So we're less, 4.5 less than that, 4.5 times less. So you look at it and you say, okay, well, what is going on? Why are we sitting here and we're freaking out over, this whole affordability? Well, there's a lot of things that are happening with affordability that people are gonna either stay in place and rent still because they don't have the down payment, or they don't wanna risk the down payment to not have savings. Or the other opposite thing is they feel like if they buy now, they may be in a predicament where prices are gonna go down. But unless there's some drastic change like we had in 2008, which was leading up for years prior, that's not gonna happen because we still have a stalemate on inventory. People are sitting in their homes with 2.75 to 3.5% interest rates, or it's all paid off. I think roughly in America, it's about 50% that you have homes paid off with those homeowners. So we don't see, in 2008, it was a different story. It was 13, 14 years ago. The baby boomers have been able to spend that 13, 14 years, especially the baby boomers, with being 78 million people, and putting all their money into paying off that home if it hadn't already been paid off. And then throughout, you got they talk about it led to a severe economic recession that impacted millions of Americans. Yeah, millions of Americans. I get that, because it was a different time. It was not even a different time. It was a different reason for what we were in at that point. And rates were high then. They were 6.5%, 7%. I think they were 7.5% going into 2008. So they're roughly right around where we were at now. So, but we're combating that high interest rate with low inventory. Low inventory is the challenge that we see right now across any market. Granted, there are markets that are down 5, 10, 15% because there are those markets that are almost not flash in the pan, but markets that don't really experience a lot of income, or don't experience a lot of stability in pricing. For instance, like a Boise blew up, and then ultimately it's down significantly on price point and also activity, all across the board activity throughout the United States. But another one is Austin, another one is Phoenix, so another one is Vegas. These markets that go up so quickly, they're more transitory markets, have changed drastically because that's what they've done the past 15, 20, 30 years, because they're more of a transitory market where you can go in, you can buy a second home because you want to go out to Vegas and have fun there, and just have some place to crash when you go out there for a weekend or maybe a month throughout the nicer months, spring or fall. Same thing as a Palm Springs or Palm Desert or La Quinta, those areas. So as you look at this article, you need to read deeper and then also know the data on the back end. Why are we saying this? Why is it? It's because the sales are completely fallen off, because buyers are kind of holding in place because it's super expensive on the price point, affordability, and then also the interest rate. And then the sellers are holding in place because they don't really have anywhere to go if they do have a current loan on their property, and it being 2.5%, 2.75%, 3%. And then on the other end, you have another scenario where they, don't want to go into a home where it's 7.5%, 8% on the purchase price. So you got this stalemate, low inventory, and then also the activity is down because people still are kind of waiting to see what the market is. We had this last year too, and then prices appreciated. So, and then this article also talks about another thing in this scenario. The article does talk about during 4 weeks to the end of October 15th, there were nearly 14% fewer homes on the market as homeowners held on to lower borrowed rates. Of course, they're going to hold on to them. Redfin sales of newly built homes are holding up better than existing home sales, partially because they're not locked in by low rates. So this is another reason. They're not locked in by low rates, but they didn't cover this either, is because those sales, basically home builders can produce almost their own interest rate. So like if I'm going to buy as a buyer for a new build, they're going to say, hey, Peter, I'm going to give you $30,000. I'm going to give you $50,000 to use. I just talked to someone that's buying in Colorado, and they're getting $150,000 from the builder to use however they see fit, to reduce the sales price, to take towards, closing costs, to take and buy down the interest rate. So those scenarios are ones where you say, okay, well, that's why home builders are winning. They're still making a profit on the sale of their property because what time they bought that, 3, 4, 5 years ago, they bought that land for very cheap. The construction materials when they started were a lot cheaper. Granted, they've gone up, but they still can dictate, and especially how they release properties, not as they release them all together, they release them one by one. So it can still make a scarcity mindset to the buyers coming in, like, oh, there's only one, I need to get after that one. And then two, they look at it and they say, hey, we can give you $50,000. So all of a sudden your interest rate was 7.5%. Now it's 5.5%. Now it's 5 3/4 comparatively to someone coming in and saying, hey, you got to buy an existing home, and the scenario, I'm sorry, but you got to spend X amount of money on the down payment, and you're going to have a 7.5%, almost 8% interest rate as a primary buyer. these are how builders can dictate their market versus someone that's just selling a home to get out of it. So hopefully that helps. I feel like, you know, this is something that's going to be talked about, as it always is. The real estate industry makes so many things move and shake in the United States. So interest rates, home buying, home building, those things for GDP throughout the United States are very, very heavily looked upon as a market mover. So hopefully this helps. If you guys can, subscribe to the channel.